Welcome to the Redbird Report, your destination for the latest on the St. Louis Cardinals. Here are your hosts, BK and T-Bone.
Alongside Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. It's been a minute. I guess we've got a rest versus rust conversation happening here on the Redbird Report. Been off for a couple of weeks. Good to be back with you guys. Appreciate you tuning in as always. T-Bone, we got to start with the news side of things for the St. Louis Cardinals. Lars Nootbaar was announced earlier this week. He's going to have surgery on not one, but he has now had surgery on not one, but both of his feet. This is coming from Derek Gould's piece in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. The surgery addressed Haglund's deformities, which caused irritation and pain where the Achilles tendon attaches to his heel, and advancements have been made in this treatment. Chaim Bloom reported this on KMOX over the weekend, saying that the team has, quote, not ruled out, end quote, opening day as a potential return for Lars Nootbaar, seeming to suggest also no guarantees that Lars Nootbaar will be back by opening day of next year. Derek Gould was able to talk to Nootbaar, and I thought it was a really interesting conversation. Nootbaar said that the goal has been to minimize his pain for more than a year, and the surgery is going to give him a chance to address and potentially alleviate some of those issues. Gould reports in his story there were signs of how much the pain has limited Lars Nootbaar, such as how he felt on his jumps in the outfield, especially as he worked to improve in center field. He added that his sprint speeds have also shown just how much this has impacted him. He was in the top quarter of the league in sprint speed back in 2022. This past couple of seasons, he was down to the bottom half of the league in sprint speed. So you see a clear, goes from looking super athletic to not so much. We saw this with the eye test.
Yeah.
He didn't move around as well as he has in the past. You'd watch him defensively, and it's like, man, this guy was a borderline Gold Glove corner outfielder who you felt at least comfortable putting into center field, even if not confident. And I no longer feel comfortable or confident putting him into center field. And there are times where I almost feel more comfortable and confident in Alec Burleson to get to balls in the outfield than Lars Nootbaar. So at least there's an explanation for this. Now we know why it was happening the way that it was, and he's able to get it treated. This does, however, potentially have a significant impact on the way that the Cardinals will approach their offseason because, 2 weeks ago, my impression was, well, Lars Nootbaar's gone. He's not going to be a Cardinal in 2026. Why would he? He's coming up on his contract in the next couple of seasons. He's getting more expensive. We've seen what both the ceiling and the floor is for a player like him. He just doesn't make sense. He doesn't fit their timeline any longer. And now you see that he's going to have a surgery, which is basically going to hold him out all offseason. Other teams know this. You're not pulling a fast one on the New York Mets or the San Francisco Giants or whoever is going to be interested in him. You're not going to get the same return for a hurt player who if you're the other team, you have no idea how he's going to come back from this. Could be great. Could get back to the athletic player that he was 2 years ago. And maybe this helps him at the plate as well. Or it could be, hey, this dude had feet issues. The worst thing that you could have, and now his lower half isn't what it once was. And he doesn't have the same athleticism, which means that he's never going to be the same player again in his major league career. This happens to guys. Happened to Albert, happened to Alan Craig back in the day. You see foot issues, not something I want to mess with. So if you're another team, I'm not giving you what I would have 2 weeks ago because you have such a significant injury that you're dealing with. So to me, T-Bone, my new impression with updated information, I think Lars Nootbaar is going to be back with the Cardinals in 2026. I think that's the only way you can approach this. You should not non-tender him. That would be crazy. You also, in my opinion, shouldn't take pennies on the dollar for a guy who maybe this works. And maybe he gets back to the player that he once was, and you either have him as a part of the core, or more likely, you recoup some of the value and next year either at the trade deadline or as you get into the offseason and teams see what he can do again, that's when you decide to make the move. But for right now, I think it's a pure hold on Lars Nootbaar.
Yeah, I agree with you. I expect he will be back with the Cardinals, especially now that he's had 2 surgeries on his feet. Because I look at this and I go, man, if you are a team, why are you trading for this guy right now. And if you are, you're doing it mostly because, one, you believe he will get back to the player that we have seen here in St. Louis, like in 2022, 2023. That's about a 15 to 20% above league average player, gets on base at a high clip, and has decent slug. But they're also going to be buying low, which means they're not giving up what they would typically for a player of this caliber. So if you're the Cardinals, yeah, it makes all the sense in the world to hang on. It also probably explains part of their decision-making at the trade deadline this past year. Remember, we were talking about, hey, why would you not consider moving on from Lars Nootbaar when Steven Kwan was getting a whole bunch of buzz? This probably would have been flagged in medicals if we're being honest about it.
Maybe. They didn't know it at the time, apparently. Because Lars Nootbaar said in this piece with Derek Gould, he wasn't aware of it until he went to the specialist in New York within the past couple of weeks. So in the offseason is when he learned of this. So I don't think that's why the Cardinals decided not to trade him. I think they knew he was dealing with stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's playing through stuff. I had been told by somebody with the Cardinals, like, it's work every day just to make sure this guy can get out there on the field. So it's not a surprise to anybody with the team, outside of the organization, whatever, that Noot wasn't playing at 100% this year. I think it is pretty surprising to a lot of people, including Lars Nootbaar himself, though, that he had to get surgery on both of his feet, and he's in walking boots right now, crutching around as he begins his offseason. That's where the surprise came into play.
Yeah, but this is where it comes down to, yeah, you're right. They need to hang on to him just to see if they could recoup some value for him, whether it be at the trade deadline or in the offseason. And there is a chance, I mean, you mentioned it, because anytime you talk about a foot injury or leg injuries, lower body injuries for hitters, always scares me to death because of the references that you made, the Alberts, the Allen Craigs, and how it really derailed their careers. But, you don't non-tender this guy because there still is the chance that he is the guy that we saw previously. He's not making a ton of money. Makes sense to keep him. But what I find interesting is what that means for the rest of their outfield. Because I always assumed, kind of like you, okay, Nootbaar's the odd man out now. Burleson's a guy that's played his way into the starting lineup. I mean, he did that last year through a year of runway. They are committed to Jordan Walker. And even if Nootbaar was healthy and we didn't know about him having surgery, you still go, okay, well, Scott's still probably going to be the guy they try and lean on in center field rather than going with Nootbaar. So bada bing, bada boom, 3 outfield spots. We're going to get rid of a logjam on the roster. Okay, Nootbaar's the odd guy out. Now I don't know what you do, because I have said in the past, like, would Chaim Bloom consider trading Alec Burleson? Just because it feels like a almost Raisy type move, which is, hey, Alec Burleson just had a really good career year. Let's cash in the chips now. Let's see if we can get some return here, and we then alleviate this logjam. I wonder if that is now more likely to happen because of this news with Lars Nootbaar, because I don't think you can go into the year with another logjam in your outfield. I think it is time to start making decisions when it comes to this roster, and it's unfortunate that Nootbaar's dealt with these injuries and kind of has, because of it, forced himself onto this roster for 2026. But I think now you have to be more open to listening on Alec Burleson and seeing if you can bring in some significant value via trade this offseason. It is interesting to me. Do you know how much older or younger Lars Nootbaar is than Alec Burleson? So Nootbaar's 27, or going to be 28. Is Burley 2 years younger? 1 year younger. Okay. And the reason why I mentioned that is just we've had so much more time watching Lars Nootbaar here with the Cardinals that it feels as though he should be like 7 years older than Alec Burleson. He's not. He's just a year older. So I agree with you. I think Burleson is a guy that you at least listen on. I love Alec Burleson. I think as a guy, he's just a good dude to talk to. I also enjoy his game. He doesn't strike out. He hits the ball with authority. He does damage. I'd be fine with him keeping him for next year. I think if he is your future outlook at first base, you could do a hell of a lot worse than that at first base. If he's somebody that you're okay with playing, DH, first base, corner outfield, depending on the day, you just kind of mix and match, depending on how you want to play things, I'm cool with that as well. If somebody, though, loves Alec Burleson's profile and they decide, like maybe the New York Mets call you, and they decide, hey, we're not going to bring back Pete Alonso next year. We decide we need to shake things up, and this is our best way to do it. This is our flexibility because of his contract. And they're offering you an arm and a leg for him. You've got to listen. And this is where I agree with what Kevin Wheeler had said recently on the Best Podcast in Baseball, where his opinion on the matter is, I don't really care who you trade. I care that you get the best return that's possible. So as you're canvassing the league and saying, there's not a whole lot here that doesn't have a for sale sign. I think that's the truth for the Cardinals. There shouldn't be a whole lot that is just completely nailed down to the floor this offseason.
Canvass the league, find out what people are willing to offer you. Right now, my guess is, because of what we were just talking about, Noot's not going to get you that best return.
Agreed.
Brendan Donovan's maybe my favorite player on the roster. I love watching him. I think he's a winning baseball player. You know who else loves watching him and thinks that he's a winning baseball player?
29 other teams.
Every team in Major League Baseball. He's got a couple of years left on his contract. He's 29 years old. He can play anywhere for you. He's a true Swiss Army knife. Like, that guy is the modern day version of what we saw with Ben Zobrist. He's basically that, just reincarnated. You know what that gets you? A haul on the trade market. So if teams call you and they're willing to sell everything in their system for Brendan Donovan, consider it. Do the same thing for Alec Burleson. Think about listening this offseason. I wouldn't just listen. I would do it for JoJo Romero coming out of your bullpen. I'm open to a lot of stuff this offseason. I thought the one thing that was for sure going to be gone is Lars Nootbaar. Now that that is probably off of the table, I think you just get super creative and listen on offers to anything. Don't rule anything out and decide what's out there is going to make your decisions for you. Other teams have as much say. I know this sounds strange, but other teams have as much say in who is on the Cardinals in 2026 as the Cardinals do, because their offers will ultimately dictate who are we getting rid of and who are we keeping here. Because I think so many of these guys have similar floor ceiling combinations that are you all that much different if you keep Alec Burleson over Brendan Donovan, or you keep Brendan Donovan over Lars, whoever it may be? And I think the answer is no. I think you feel fine about whichever direction you decide to go, but you do need to move on from multiple of these pieces to open up the playing time that's necessary, which you should have done years ago.
Yeah, and I agree they should be. Like, when I do say names like Alec Burleson and I lock in on Brendan Donovan, the reason I keep saying those guys' names is because I am doing what you are saying, right? I am theoretically trying to run through my head, okay, what pieces do they have full control of that they can move to 29 teams that would carry value? And then the reason that I don't throw Contreras into that, because Contreras can control his fate. Now, I do find it interesting, like the Mets scenario that you laid out, because I've kept saying Alec Burleson's name, but yeah, I can see a path where Wilson did seem somewhat open to going to a contender. If you do that, okay, now I can see the picture of how Alec Burleson and Lars Nootbaar are here going into 2026. And the thing that I find interesting with like that decision making, like you think about who the three most valuable Cardinals are in terms of their value across baseball. I think the three guys that I would say, two of them I've brought up, Burleson, Donovan, and I think probably number one on that list is Mason Wynn.
Agreed.
And there's maybe a scenario where they make that happen. I don't typically throw them out there because I think I'm not getting rid of a Gold Glove shortstop that's in the pre-arb system. But what makes it interesting for Burleson, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later, but you mentioned his contact rate. The lesson that can be learned from the Toronto Blue Jays in this World Series, yes, slug baby slug is important. Yes, missing bats is important. But you know what the Blue Jays don't do? They don't miss. They do not strike out that much. And Burleson is one of those guys that his strikeout rate in his 4 years here in St. Louis is at 13.6%. For context, 22.5% is the Major League Baseball average. So that kind of feels like a guy that when you look deeper and peek under that hood a little bit more and look at more of his profile and you try and figure out what do you do with him with his position, I'll figure out the position. But that is the kind of piece that the Toronto Blue Jays, the reason that they're having success and got to the World Series, and at the time that we're recording this are up 3-2 in the World Series going back home, is because they have a lot of Alec Burleson type guys. They've got the superstar in Vlad Guerrero Jr., but they've got a lot of guys that don't miss with the bat. They put the bat on the ball.
Agreed. Everything you just said is why Major League Baseball will value him too. So this is where it gets tough if you're the Cardinals. I like Alec Burleson. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think as a supplementary piece, he can be a part of a championship team. I think Brendan Donovan can be a part of a championship team. I think Wilson Contreras can be a part of a championship team. I think a lot of the guys that were on the Cardinals last year, it feels as though they're not winning players or they're not guys that can be pieces for championship rosters. Look at what Tommy Edman has done over the last couple of years for the Dodgers. Tommy Edman is the exact same player today that he was for the Cardinals. I know we got off to that crazy start and people were like, oh, they unlocked something that wasn't there for the Cardinals. No, he's the same guy. Go look at the numbers. They're the exact same. But the reason why he fits in better with them is because they have Shohei Ohtani. They have Freddie Freeman. Now, it hasn't been the same this year, but they have Mookie Betts. They have Will Smith. They have guys that can allow for Tommy Edman to bat in the bottom half of the order, and anything he adds is a bonus. The same thing can be true for Donnie or Burleson. If they go to these teams that are true contenders, Donnie will bat like 5th in their lineup, and he'll be great in that role. Alec Burleson as a 5-hole hitter behind, like, imagine Burley in LA. Just put him in that lineup and bat him like 5th. It'd be amazing. Put him in front of Teoscar Hernandez. Good luck. That guy would hit 25 home run next year and bat 295 on the season. He'd be great there. In this lineup, though, that has value, don't get me wrong, but you need the Shohei. You need the Vlad Guerrero Jr. So you're doing everything you can to find those guys. And if the way to find them is by trading Burley, it's by trading Brendan Donovan. If that, in your mind, if you're in Chaim Bloom's shoes, gets you a step closer to the ultimate goal, you got to do it, man. Hard decisions need to be made this offseason. That means that it could result in fan favorites getting traded, or guys that are good baseball players getting moved for guys that are going to be good baseball players when you get back into contention. So, in my opinion, I think that Lars Nootbaar is going to be here this upcoming season. I would also say, and I mentioned this today on our show, I think Brendan Donovan should either be traded or extended this offseason. I think you kind of have to make your decision one way or the other there. I don't know that it makes sense to have him on a 2-year deal at this point when he's 28 years old. You're not capitalizing on his full trade value or his full value to you as a team by not potentially extending him. So I would go one of those two routes. And then Burleson, man, it's tough, but he's somebody that you absolutely have to at least consider what he can get you on the open trade market.
You mentioned extending Donovan. If they keep Donovan and they keep Burleson, I think what that has to signal, because of what you were talking about with the Dodgers, because it is a great comp. A lot of these teams, the Blue Jays, the same thing. They've got the superstars so they can put these guys in their proper spots. What that tells me is they believe, now maybe I'm a little aggressive on this, but they would believe keeping Burleson, Donovan means they're closer than we are expecting, but that also probably means they might think they have someone internal that can become that. They may think Herrera can become that bat that we're talking about that is that star, or they believe that much in J.J. Weatherholt. That Weatherholt can come up here. Maybe it's not the first year, but the second year, he can just take that next step. He becomes that superstar bat that they're looking for. Or, and this one nobody will believe when I say it, or they believe they can truly still unlock it from Jordan Walker. So if they keep Burley and Donovan, I don't think they're going to be clear, because I'm with you. I think they probably hang on to Nootbaar and they probably trade Donovan is my expectation. But if they hang on to both of those guys, it would tell me they believe they've got a star internally. And they could be totally wrong about that. But I think that would have to be your belief if you're going to keep those two guys and not capitalize on their trade value.
Agreed. I mean, you look at what the Blue Jays lineup was this year. Their secondary pieces are basically what you have internally. Mm-hmm. I mean, Alejandro Kirk is, I mean, if you just want to do a 1-for-1 replacement, it's basically what you have with Ivan Herrera hitting-wise. Bo Bichette this year for them was effectively what you have with Alec Burleson. Dalton Varsho is pretty similar in some ways. He does it more with the power than with the on-base, but in the past, he's been more of an on-base guy. To what you have with somebody like a Brendan Donovan. I mean, they're secondary pieces, very similar to the Cardinals' best hitters right now. What the Cardinals are lacking is Vlad and George Springer, with what George Springer became for them again this season. You have to find those guys. It's not a new conversation. We've had it a million different times. It's just a different way of framing it is everything else makes a lot more sense once you get that 3-4 in your order or your 2-3 in the order. Once you get those guys, it unlocks everything else. Then the pitching side of things matters. And, you know, they have really good dudes and you don't. So there's a lot. There's a lot of team building that still needs to be done here in St. Louis. This is just the start of it. So it's going to be an interesting offseason for some of the decisions that have to be made on the personnel side for the St. Louis Cardinals. The other side of things, we got an update for with the coaching front. What are the Cardinals going to do there? How does Yadi or Molina fit into their plans, if at all? And what's it going to look like down in the minor league system? They're starting to put their money where their mouth is. We'll tell you about it next here on the Redbird Report. So we got an update on the coaching front with Yadi or Molina. You're never going to believe this, T-Bone. He's not going to be a full-time member of the Cardinals coaching staff for 2025.
Get my hopes up.
So according to Katie Wu of The Athletic, the Cardinals are still looking to maybe see if there's some kind of a role that he could help with the Cardinals organization. But the expectation as of October 30th, I never want to say anything definitive with Yadi because you never know, anything could change. He's not expected to be part of the everyday coaching staff for 2026. Your surprise level on a scale of 1 to 10 is what, T-Bone?
Like a 1. I'm not surprised really at all to hear that. When he made the announcement that he was making an announcement, a lot of people got out over their skis going, oh, maybe he's announcing he's going to be joining the Cardinals staff. And I went, nah, he's done this before. Like, let's just wait and see what it is. And it was, hey, I want to get into coaching. Yeah, we already knew that. I'm not surprised that they're not going to be adding Yadi Molina full time to this gig. I think that's up to Yadi if he wants to do that. And I think most importantly, is Yadi willing to take on a quote unquote lesser role and be, I guess what I would say is equivalent of being a bench coach, because the way that he has talked, it sounds like he just wants to jump straight into being a major league manager. And I don't know that he's prepared to be that guy for the full 162 just yet. I'm not sure Albert is either, to be fair. And Albert's getting a lot of buzz to be potentially the San Diego Padres manager as we record this on October 30th.
To be fair with Albert, though, he's had multiple seasons of coaching in the Dominican.
Sure, but Yadi's done managing as well 1 or 2 years down in one of the winter ball leagues. Puerto Rico, I think. Possibly. Yeah. But I think that it comes down to, okay, if he was coming to the Cardinals staff, Oli Marmol and the Cardinals like his coaching staff. So he wasn't going to be replacing a Daniel Descalzo to take over a bench coach. Cardinals were not going to fire Oli Marmol to hire Yadier Molina to be their manager. So what was his role going to be here in St. Louis? Was he willing to be basically what he was when he came to town this season, the 2 or 3 times, which was, hey, you can be in uniform, you can be a part of the coaching staff, and you'll be right there lockstep with Oli Marmol and Daniel Descalzo, the pitching staff and the hitting staff, and you'll just kind of get a sense as to what this is going to be like for a full 162. And if he's not willing to do that role, then there's no spot for him here in St. Louis. He's welcome to it, I'm sure, but there's no spot for him here in St. Louis if he's not willing to take a lesser role.
Can I be honest? The place that I want him is in their minor league system. Like, if you're the Cardinals catchers right now, you're clearly putting a priority on your young talent. You're pushing for like 2027 and beyond. Yeah, hopefully we play a baseball season in 2027. The Dodgers losing might help you in that regard. But if I'm them, I want you going down and working with these kids. Go work with Ray Rodriguez down in AA next year, right? Go work with Leo Bernal, who's a young catcher for us. Just be around these kids. Teach them how to call a game, right? Go through what are you seeing over the course of a 9-inning game. Walk through it with them between every single inning, because if you're able to do that, I'm able to develop my catchers. So hopefully in 2027, where they're getting up to the big league level, I'm in a spot where I can be ready to go. It also means for Yadi, you don't have to be there every day. This is not a 162 grind where you're going out and Monday through Wednesday, you're in Milwaukee. And then Thursday through Sunday, you're in Seattle. And then you come back here to St. Louis for the following week. And you're having to go through all of this grind, which he clearly did not seem all that interested in over the past couple of seasons. No, now you can just kind of come and go as you please. Maybe it's like a week out of every month you're spending with one of the teams in the minor league system. That's helpful. Him being around those young guys really makes an impact, just like him being around the Cardinals last year for a weekend seemed to give them a little bit more juice. So that if I was in their shoes, I don't know what they're trying to do, but if I was in their shoes, that would be the kind of role that I would want to see Yadier Molina in. But the fact that he's not at the big league level this year and in uniform, I don't think it's overly surprising. The other thing that the Cardinals have announced, according to Katie Wu, is that they are going to be hiring a lot more staffing throughout the major and minor league system. So in addition to expanding their professional scouting department, which we knew this is something that had been announced about a month ago, they are also going to be adding an international scouting director who will serve under assistant GM Moises Rodriguez. So that way they've got somebody that is additional on the scouting side of things for the pro scouting side and international scouting. They have desperately needed more staffing on the international side of things for a while now. Mm-hmm. It is something that I've wondered, is that going to be a place where Chaim Bloom thinks, all right, I can win here. I can go out and make my mark with their international scouting side of things. Because you look at the Cardinals roster in recent years, it's where they've whiffed maybe more than anywhere else. They've had some draft picks that haven't worked, don't get me wrong, but on the international side, like none of those guys are making it to the big league level, much less becoming legitimate impact players at this level. So I'm happy to see that personally.
Yeah, and it's them kind of for the first time in a while, I would say, kind of living up to what their word was. You know, that was a big emphasis. Really, the only thing that I would say that you could take away from his opening press conference was, hey, look, we are committed to doing what's necessary, right? Ownership is telling me they're going to be committed. The DeWitts even said that. Whatever Heim needs, we're going to provide for him. Well, he clearly needed more help within the front office to help him build this infrastructure that they're trying to get back to. And I like the way that they're doing it, too. I mean, you mentioned they need to be better at the international market. Like, just thinking in my head, who's their best international, like, move lately? Reyes, wasn't he technically an international free agent?
Rosarena, Adolis Garcia, those guys obviously did not do it here, but they were successful elsewhere.
And that's, almost a decade ago at this point?
Yep.
So they needed to improve upon that. But I also like the fact that in these additions that he is making, it is a balance of we are going with data-driven, going with the spreadsheet, going by what the numbers say, using analytics, the big buzzword, but we're also hiring and keeping people that are here with like scouting with their eyes, right? I think you have to have that balance.
Agreed.
And Jaime has said that that's how he believes that they should do it, and that is how they are doing it, you know? I don't think you can just rely on the numbers because sometimes the numbers can get a little bit wonky and they don't match the eye test, but also I can admit that, you know what, your eye's not always right either, and the numbers can back up some of the finer tuned details that you're looking for. So I like the approach that he's having so far this offseason. I like the fact that, as Katie reported, they're looking to hire, I think it was a hitting coordinator throughout the minor leagues to oversee everything. That was kind of what they probably should have had Brant Brown's role at, or not Brant Brown, excuse me, Jeff Albert's role as when he was here. Maybe not the hitting coach of the Cardinals, but overseeing everything.
Originally, it was his role.
And then he got added into becoming the hitting coach. And that's when things kind of went a little bit awry for them. But I like everything that they seem to be saying that they're willing to do to help support Chaim Bloom in his first year as the Pobo.
I haven't talked to anybody within the organization, so I can't speak to that right now. But the Cardinals, according to Katie Wu, are also seeking a new head athletic trainer. Former trainer Adam Olson has been reassigned to a front office position. According to this story, Olson will continue to serve as director of medical training, but his new role will involve overseeing the training staff from an organization-wide approach rather than just in the major league dugout. That one's interesting to me. Just because you look at it and there are some pretty significant injuries that took place this year, some of which were like Noot, for example. They didn't know exactly what was going on there. They just knew that he was hurt. The Brendan Donovan situation, where an injury got worse potentially by him continuing to play through it. Sometimes new president of baseball operations just want to make changes, right? Like they want their guys in prominent roles. Maybe that's just what's happening here. Maybe Adam Olson had gone to the team and said, I don't want to travel with the organization as much as I have for, I don't know, the last 15, 20 years, however long it's been. Or maybe they decided they want to go in a different direction with their trainer because of some of the injury stuff that we've seen. All of this is speculation. I want to say that right now. But I found this one to be really interesting because they're not making any other significant staffing changes at the major league level other than this. It just stood out to me when I saw it. I was like, given the number of stories this year that we saw that were related to injuries, I wonder what's going on there, if anything, or if Adam Olson just decided I don't want to do this anymore.
And see, it's interesting because I almost had like the opposite read on it, to where it was, I understand that the position players did have some weird injuries. Like they didn't pick up on the Nootbaar one, as you said. Donovan was a weird toe leads to groin. Arenado's was weird. I don't know, jammed finger off a helmet that fell off his head to shoulder. But I looked at it and said, I wonder if this was more of kind of overseeing with pitching health. Think about the rotation and how healthy it was this year and how they were able to get those guys through the season, which was a huge goal for them. I mean, they only used, 7 starters all season long. They never placed a guy that was in their rotation on the IL this year. And then you look down in the minor leagues and what happened? Cooper Jerpy blew out his arm. Tekoa Roby blew out his arm. I wondered if it was more of a, oh, hey, maybe we have found something here at the major league level that helps keep these guys healthy. I wonder if we can move him into, as Katie reported there, overseeing the organization and trying to pass that down from major leagues all the way down to the lower levels of the minors and see if they can keep pitchers healthy. Now, to be clear, I think pitchers being healthy was all luck for the St. Louis Cardinals. Maybe there were some things that they're able to do to help those guys stay healthy, but that was the way that I kind of oversaw that one. But it could be either one of those, right?
I was also thinking back to our conversation that we had with Cardinals assistant general manager Rob Cerfolio when he came in, and he was talking about all of the like forward-thinking stuff that they're doing in the minor league levels right now, and maybe they're doing all of those exact same things at the major league level, or maybe that's something that they decided, hey, we want to go get somebody that's a little bit newer, a little bit more on the cutting edge of things. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here, but I found it to be interesting that they're going to go a different direction, because this kind of like when a college football team replaces its strength and conditioning coach, it's one of the first things that you can see where it's like, all right, what's going on there? Because they spend a ton of time with the strength and conditioning coach. At the major league level, when you replace your athletic trainer, especially one that's been with you for 13 years now at the major league level, I find that one to be pretty interesting, if nothing else. All right, coming up on the other side, I want to get into the Blue Jays, because as we're recording this on Thursday afternoon, they're a game away from potentially winning this year's World Series. There's almost nothing any team in Major League Baseball can learn from the Dodgers. Go sign Shohei Ohtani, go trade for Mookie Betts, go have more money than God himself. So yeah, good luck. Good luck following that path. What can teams learn from the Blue Jays, though? We'll talk about that, see how it can apply to the Cardinals coming up next year on the Redbird Report. I didn't see this coming. I did not see the Dodgers being down 3-2 in the World Series and facing elimination on the road.
You didn't see that when the Blue Jays came to town and swept the Cardinals? You didn't think that's the team that could win the World Series?
Nope, sure didn't. Did not see this coming, and I apologize. I apologize to each and every one of you right now for not being able to foresee the Blue Jays being the team to beat this year. They could still lose. It's entirely possible. Dodgers come back, win this thing in 7. That could happen. But I do want to spend a little bit of time, T-Bone, talking about how the Blue Jays have gone about their build, because they're on the cusp of a potential World Series that none of us, I don't think, saw coming. And then I look at their roster and especially their rotation. Okay, so you have Trey Yesevich, who was amazing the other night. He was drafted in the first round 18 months ago. You look at the rest of their rotation, free agent, trade, a significant trade at the deadline a couple of years ago, Rule 5, like all of these dudes came from outside of the organization. Okay, so they don't develop their own pitching. I'm sure they did that, though, for every major position player on their roster, right? No, not exactly. They signed George Springer via free agent. They got another one via trade with Dalton Varsho, a huge trade that they made where Gabby Moreno was sent elsewhere. They go out and they sign a free agent in Ernie Clement. You get Andre Jimenez in a big trade that they made with Cleveland about a year ago now. This is a team that has been constructed with a lot of external pieces coming together and potentially winning a World Series here. That being said, I do think there are some lessons for the Cardinals because their core was developed internally. You look at Vlad Guerrero Jr., international free agency. He was an amateur free agent. The way that we were just talking about the Cardinals needing to get more of those, well, Vlad Guerrero Jr. is a perfect example of what it can become. Bo Bichette, former second-round pick, becomes a franchise shortstop. Maybe the Cardinals can develop their Bo Bichette with somebody like Mason Wynn. Alejandro Kirk, another international amateur free agent via Mexico almost a decade ago, has developed now into one of the better hitting catchers in Major League Baseball. So there's your core, and then you supplement around it with players that are coming in either via free agency, trade, etc., and then you go out and get whatever you're missing, which for the Blue Jays was their rotation. T-Bone, for you, what is the lesson here? Is there anything that the Cardinals can learn as they continue to try to build into what the Blue Jays have now become?
Well, I think the lesson from them, I mentioned earlier about their ability to just put the ball in play. I don't think you can replicate that per se, right? Like what they've been able to do is very special in that. But it just comes down to, okay, if you are able to develop the superstars, long as you can add complementary pieces, however you may be able to do it, then you're going to have success. If you don't develop the superstars, you have to go out and sign them. And I think that's kind of the lesson from their rotation. Look, the Cardinals would tell you, hey, look, why did things fail here in St. Louis? Part of it is, yes, we didn't develop the position push, but they will point to their pitching, right? What was their success when they were in that run from like 04 through 2015? It was they had a great pitching pipeline year in, year out. Well, they would tell you, well, because our pipeline dried up, that's why our pitching's not been good. No, you spent the money on the wrong guys is what happened there. Because, I mean, you mentioned it with the rotation of the Toronto Blue Jays. Everybody that's in there, the Blue Jays haven't developed pitching outside of Yusevich, who just appeared out of being a first-round pick 18 months ago. They went out and signed guys with stuff that plays in modern baseball, which is swing and miss stuff. Kevin Gausman, 5 years, $110 million. Chris Bassett, 3 years, $63 million deal. Trade and acquire Jose Barrios from the Minnesota Twins, signed him to a 7-year, $131 million extension. Max Scherzer, 1 year, $15.5 million. All those contracts that I just read off, those trades as well with Barrios, the Cardinals could have done those. They could have made those moves. And instead, they decided to settle for the middle tier of the market when it came to their rotation of, we're going to sign the Steven Matches. We're going to go out and extend to Miles Michaelis. We're going to sign Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn just to eat innings. No. When you are looking to build a rotation, if it fails internally, which is everybody's goal, right? They should be trying to build it from within. If it fails, you have to be willing to spend on stuff that's got swing and miss. You need swing and miss when it comes to building out a rotation, no matter how it is that you can get there. I think the lesson that can be learned from Toronto is just because you don't develop pitching doesn't mean you can't just go out and just construct a rotation via free agency or via trades. The Blue Jays did that to a T. Now, the Dodgers did too, but they did it in their version of it, where they're at the very top of the market. But you don't have to just rely on drafting and developing at position players and when it comes to pitching. You have to be willing to churn through your roster and be able to make some moves. Like when you look at the time that Varsho trade, they gave up Moreno and they gave up Luis Gurriel. Early on, it looked like they lost that trade. And now that you look at it, Varsho has become a very good piece for them. And I think he won a Gold Glove or was a Gold Glove finalist for them in center field. You have to be willing to constantly be churning through your roster.
I would also add this. Toronto has had a slow burn with this build. So they had a roster in like that 2015, 2016 range where they were competing for potentially a World Series. They got to back-to-back ALCSs and ultimately were not able to get over the hump. But that was a team capable of getting to the World Series. The core aged out. They had to flip the roster, as you're talking about right now. And they get into 2017, it's a disaster. They win 76 games. The next year, 73 games. The next year, 67 games. They go into an unintentional tank. They were not a very good baseball team. And their payroll reflected that. So in 2015, the Cardinals' payroll was $122 million. That same year, the Blue Jays payroll was $125. Both teams were trying to win. They were up there, top 10 to top 12 in Major League Baseball. The Blue Jays at that point were 10th. The Cardinals were 12th in Major League Baseball payroll. So they were both really trying to win, and they were both excellent baseball teams at that point in time. That's 2015. It continues from there. So 2016, 2017, Cardinals are about 150. And at that same point in time, the Blue Jays are around 160. So they're kind of in line. 2018, 160 to 160. All right, still in line with one another. And then in 2019, the Cardinals are at $165 million in payroll. The Blue Jays drop back to 115. And this is around the same point in time where the Blue Jays have had a couple of bad years in a row, similar to where the Cardinals find themselves right now. And then in 2020, stuff starts to click for the Blue Jays again. They make it to the playoffs. It's the COVID season, but you can see, all right, the core is starting to build. What do the Blue Jays do? They start to add a little bit. So by 2021, their payroll's up to $135 million. For context, at this point, the Cardinals' payroll is up to $165. So the Blue Jays are well behind, but coming back up. 2022, the following season, Blue Jays payroll goes from $135 million. They had won 90 games the year prior. Say it's right, it's go time. Let's start to push. Goes up to 171. Cardinals payroll in 2022 actually went down slightly to 154. The Blue Jays in 2022 make it to the playoffs, win 92 games, but fall short, get swept in the wild card, do not win a game there. What do? Keep investing. They go from 171 to 210 in their payroll. Cardinals go to 175. 2024, Blue Jays once again had been swept out of the AL wildcard. So what do, T-Bone? You keep adding. You keep going for it. Went from 210 to 225. And this year, they didn't make it to the playoffs a year ago. Disaster, disappointing season. What do? They keep adding. They keep doubling down. Get up to 240 in their payroll. They have gone from 20th in payroll in 2020 to 13th, 11th, 7th, 6th, 5th. I don't know if the Cardinals are capable of maintaining a payroll that is top 5 in Major League Baseball. I'm not asking them to. The lesson from the Blue Jays, though, is to invest when you get good again. It is to keep doubling down, keep believing. We've got a core that we believe in. We've got a superstar. Let's keep pushing. The Cardinals are now going through what the Blue Jays went through in the late 2010s. It's a down part of your cycle. That is natural. It happens to almost every team in Major League Baseball. The Cardinals have been able to push it off far longer than most can. The Blue Jays then got good again, and they pushed. What I think the lesson to be learned is here for the Cardinals, don't forget that second part. Don't forget that it can't just be developing the core. You can't just get Vlad Guerrero Jr. and Bo Bichette and Alejandro Kirk and think, we got it, we're good here, keep bringing in through the pipeline. No, that is when you go out and you get Kevin Gausman. That is when you go make an aggressive move to trade for Jose Barrios. And when that doesn't work, you continue going out and getting Chris Bassett and you keep throwing assets at it. You get George Springer. Shohei Ohtani interested? Let's see if he'll come here. Aaron Judge, let's try it. Try for everything. Go and get more superstars. That is what the lesson is from the Toronto Blue Jays. They kept throwing resources at it. They kept pushing. And the Cardinals at times have been unwilling to do that. So I'm curious to see what they decide to do here. There's a lesson from this Blue Jays team. I'm curious to see which one they learn and which direction they decide to go.
And the hope is that when you're the Cardinals and you think about it, because when you kept saying that and they kept saying, hey, you've finally gotten there. Okay, now you add to it, right? You continue the build. I couldn't help but think, boy, 2021, 2022, that was the time when the Cardinals could have done that, right? They got to that line as we talk about it, and then they never went beyond it. That 2022 team is the best one that they've had in the 2020s so far here. And what were they missing? They were missing pitching. They needed another arm to help them out. And in the offseason, they didn't add it. That 2021 team was the same thing. 2023, we were talking about it going into the year, like, hey, do they have enough pitching? And they said, we're not going to spend. Next thing you know, 3 years later, you're in whatever we're going to call this, a rebuild of what they're trying to do. So, yeah, you have to be able to supplement that, and you have to be willing. And I don't even know if you have to wait until you are good, right? You just need to have signs that somebody is going to be able to take off for you. Because, I mean, you mentioned it. It was 2021 is the first year that they really start to really push when they go out and they sign Kevin Gausman. Yeah, that year they made it to the playoffs. 2020 is a very weird year. A lot of teams would have just looked at it and said, 60 games? Maybe we don't. Let's see what we do for a full 162. They looked at it and said, man, Bo Bichette just had another really good year, even though it's a small sample size. Vlad Guerrero Jr. was now 15% above league average and looks like he's a really good player at 21 years old. Okay, maybe we're not going to buy in. Maybe we shouldn't buy into this, but let's go ahead and do it because we believe in the two guys that we've developed to lead this thing, in Vlad Guerrero Jr. and in Bo Bichette. Maybe we spend this a little bit early, but it is worth trying for right now. And my fear for the Cardinals is they're going to wait until they are really good again, until they're at the NL Central point, right? Well, we'll wait till we are that 90-win team again that wins the NL Central. No, if you're like 82-80, feel like you're ahead of schedule and J.J. Weatherholt looks like a stud, 2027 might be the year that you spend that money and try and end this whatever we're calling it.
And that's what I was getting at a couple of weeks ago when we were talking here and we were mentioning, like, do you consider going to free agency this offseason? I think the answer to them is probably going to be no, but you can make the case where, hey, you get this guy locked in now, and then whenever it happens, you've got him as a piece of that core. The other thing, just a small aside lesson from the Blue Jays, it's about getting lucky. Some of this is health luck. George Springer finally got healthy this year. They didn't know that was for sure going to happen, but he did. They got really fortunate where their first round pick from a year ago wasn't just good and didn't just help them. He was excellent immediately and became like the best pitcher of the postseason. Mm-hmm. Nobody could have foreseen that happening. That's like the Brandon Pfaadt thing happening for the Diamondbacks. A big part of their run was Brandon Pfaadt had a month of his life. He's never been that same guy again, but he was awesome for a month, helped them get to the World Series, and ultimately that's what he's going to be remembered for. And like, it doesn't matter what happens the rest of his career. He was amazing for that month, and that works. So for Trey Yesevich, that's their find this year. I don't know if he's going to be this good long term. My bet would be against it, but I think he's going to be really good. Liam Doyle might be awesome for the Cardinals as soon as next year, or he might take the more traditional path where it's going to take a couple of years to develop into a good starter. But good fortune, good luck, definitely a part of the Toronto Blue Jays story. All right, that's what we've got for you guys today. For Tanner Hendrickson and for Zane, who always does a fantastic job for us on the video side of things, I'm Brandon Kiley. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. No World Series to talk about that at that point in time. We'll be firmly into offseason mode here on the Redbird Report. We'll talk to you guys then.
Find every episode of the Redbird Report with Brandon Kiley and Tanner Hendrickson on YouTube or at 101ESPN.com.